Welcome to our video worship devotions. We greet you in the spirit of freedom, compassion, justice, and peace. And may the God of love and peace be with you. My name is Alex Bradley, and I'm a Unitarian minister living and working in Cheshire. And I light our flame with words from two sources. Firstly, from Psalm 133. How good and how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. And from Prem Jagyazi. When you can't go outside, how about exploring the inner universe? It has far more potential than the external world can ever offer. And a prayer. God of love, you have taught us that we are all one, members of one body, called to care for each other and for our fellow human beings and the creatures that share this world with us. Help us to recognize that we do not exist for ourselves alone, but that we are part of a great network of being in which every part is necessary and where every person has their place, equal in dignity as your children. May we be alive to the voice from within, which is your voice speaking to us in the words we call our conscience. May we see your work in the intricate patterns of life that are exquisite in their workmanship, so that all works together to produce the greater whole. May we see in the beauty all around us a reflection, as in a mirror, of your eternal beauty. In all things, may we seek to become more like you, so that our hearts and minds may become as at one with you, in our desire to know you and to walk with you along the path of life. Amen. Our first reading comes from the Gospel of John in the Bible. Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch of mine that bears no fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear yet more fruit. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. They who abide in me, and I in them, it is they who bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And our second reading is from the famous story, Robinson Crusoe, story of a man stranded on an island, written by Daniel Defoe and published in 1719. My next work was to view the country and seek a proper place for my habitation and where to stow my goods to secure them from whatever might happen. Where I was, I yet knew not, whether on a continent or on an island, whether inhabited or not inhabited, whether in danger of wild beasts or not. There was a hill not above a mile above me, which rose up very steep and high, and which seemed to overtop some of the hills, which lay as in a ridge from it northward. I took out one of the fowling pieces and one of the pistols and a horn of powder, and thus armed I travelled for a discovery up to the top of that hill, where, after I had with great labour and difficulty got to the top, I saw my fate, to my great affliction, viz. That I was in an island environed every way with the sea, no land to be seen except some rocks, which lay a great way off, and two small islands, less than this, which lay about 3 leagues to the west. I found also that the island I was in was barren, and as I saw good reason to believe, uninhabited except by wild beasts, of whom, however, I saw none. This was the week when the lights went out in our home, literally. We were reading late at night when the light on my side table went off. I thought the bulb's probably gone. I'll just turn on the main light. However, that did not work either. Thinking the dud light bulb had probably clicked all the fuses to the off position, I felt for my torch and went to the fuse box. All the fuses were in the on position. I tried switching them off and then back to on again, but it had no effect. Everything was off and it was obviously going to remain that way. The lights, the cooker clock, the microwave display, the fridge freezer, everything. I picked up the phone to ring the electricity network supplier, but the landline phone, being a cordless model, wouldn't work. Luckily, my mobile still had sufficient charge to phone them. By now it was close to midnight, and we thought the earliest we would be seen would be the next morning. However, we received very prompt and good service. A very helpful woman with a Scottish voice said that our near neighbours, a family with young children, and even we ourselves counted as priority cases. The workmen came within 45 minutes. In the meantime, we had to try to ensure we stayed awake for when they did come. They checked everything and then found the cause was a blown fuse in the electricity substation nearby, but there was no one qualified to replace it, so they had to go to the depot about 10 miles away to collect it, to collect a generator to work through the night. It was about 2:30 before we finally turned in. We were indeed fortunate to receive such excellent service. Our neighbours were fine and suffered no ill effects either. The food in our freezer was still frozen, thanks to the prompt response. However, it set me thinking about how much we need each other and how easy it is to be cut off. The branches can do nothing, cut off from the vine, says our Bible reading. Cut off from the electricity supply, our heating was off. I could not read. I could not cook. I could not even make a cup of tea or use the landline. Candles, torch batteries, and the charge on a mobile phone only last so long. If we had been cut off for a greater length of time, all the modern gadgets and machines we take for granted would have been rendered entirely useless. We have all experienced being cut off in the past few months. We have experienced being cut off from our families, friends, workplaces, cinemas, pubs, shops, and churches. And it is interesting that the restrictions have sometimes been called circuit breakers. The flow of energy from social interaction has been cut off, and we soon notice the difference. While self-reliance is a desirable virtue, as Emerson and others remind us, it is often confused with being an entirely autonomous, independent individual. There is not and can never be any such thing as an entirely independent individual. And when the idea of independence is taken to an extreme, it can be highly damaging, both to individuals themselves and to the wider community. If this is true for electricity supply in our modern society, it is true for our relationships with one another. Jesus compares the spiritual life to being like the branches of a vine. Paul the Apostle writing to the Christians in Rome and in Corinth, says that the churches are like a human body in which every organ, every part depends on the others. People can do much good as individuals, of course, and they do. But they need a connection to the source of power without which they cannot function. People may wish to help make the world a better place, but except at the smallest individual level, charities and benevolent organizations are necessary to channel their donations and goodwill to those in need. We can worship alone. I often do so myself. And this is a powerful force for good. But like very many of us, I also feel a need to join up with other people to seek the power that comes from being connected to something greater than ourselves, a coming together that we often call a congregation or chapel or church. Ralph Waldo Trine, in his book In Tune with the Infinite, uses the image of flowing water as a metaphor for our connectedness with each other and with God. He says, in the degree that we recognize our connection with the infinite spirit, which is the life of all, and in the degree that we open ourselves to this divine inflow, do we come into harmony with the highest, the most powerful, and the most beautiful everywhere. And in the degree that we do this, do we overflow, so that all that come in contact with us receive the effects of this realization on our part. When telling the story of Robinson Crusoe, Daniel Defoe brings out the loneliness of his character and the fact that even the most introverted and shy among us need companionship and connection with others. It is not just our fellow human beings that can help us. Anyone with a dog, a cat, a parrot, a hamster, even a goldfish, will probably tell you what good companions they are, especially when they live alone. Such household companions have often been a lifeline in this time of coronavirus, when people have been unable to see their loved ones. Our Unitarian and Free Christian churches are places where people can think for themselves freely without being told what they should believe, but they are also places where we share our thoughts and feelings as a loving community. One of our greatest Unitarian ministers, William Ellery Channing, spoke of his connection to the great Christian tradition down the centuries. He wrote, "There is one grand, all-comprehending church, and if I am a Christian, I belong to it, and no one can shut me out of it." He wished to be connected to a source of power and love. At times of stress and difficulty, we can often feel cut off, drained of energy and power, isolated from everyone and everything. It is at times like this that we can help others to reconnect by a phone call, a text, a letter, or an email, even though we cannot visit them physically. We can help ourselves, difficult though this may be at times, by picking up the phone ourselves, or, if this is not possible, by reading books that encourage us or give us new strength for purpose. It might be the Bible, or a book of poetry, or an anthology of devotional readings and writings from various sources. In fact, anything that might help us see that life is good and that we are part of a greater whole, and which will help us connect to the harmony which is at the heart of creation. may you find your connection to all that is, and may the power of love flow into you like the pure waters of the river of life itself. Amen. And now a benediction to conclude our worship. From this online gathering for worship to the world beyond the computer screen, from being on a video tape to out there in real time, from being together on a computer server to being apart in physical space. Let us go forth in love, hope, and peace, knowing that we are joined to each other in our hearts and at one with God in spirit and in truth. Amen.